What's up, everybody? So we're back out in the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we are going to be attaching and profiling the handle scales for this knife. So when it boils down to it, we've got to get everything attached on here, we've got to get it all profiled, but before we jump into that, I want to talk about something. You know, I've been doing a little bit of the TED Talks and a little bit of the knowledge given at the beginning of these videos for this particular series. I want to go ahead and continue that. So there's a couple of things that I wish people would have told me whenever I first started making knives, and it would have made my life a lot easier. So part one of this is, if people would have just told me to not only watch how people made knives, but how people use knives, I would have been so happy. It would have been so much easier. So not every knife maker is a camper. Not every knife maker is a chef, but they title their videos making a camp knife, making a chef's knife. And you go through and you watch those videos and you get all your knowledge based on that, and you're trying to think through how they made that knife and why they made that knife and how it would be utilized, but then you don't go past that and actually see how people utilize those knives. So you need to do both. You need to actually see how they're made and how they're utilized, because like I said, the maker might not be the person who's going to use it, and they might not have made all the best choices within that build, but you took all the notes from that and then you replicated that in your own shop. So then you took their knowledge and then applied your limited amount of knowledge and you made a thing and you titled it Camp Knife. You don't want to do that. You want to actually see how people are utilizing those tools and then bring those two bits of knowledge together. I saw it be made, I saw it be used, how can I do the thing to make the best thing possible, and then push forward with that. So my biggest suggestion is, if you're gonna make a camp knife, again, not only watch how a camp knife is made, but also watch how a camp knife is utilized. Same thing for chef knife being made, chef knife being utilized, so you can see the balance of those things, how they hold the handle, how they do all that stuff, so that you can start kind of focusing on your own process and you make the best decisions possible moving forward, and not create bad habits to where you make a freaking chopper with a gut hook on it or something like that. It's just crazy. You just want to make sure that you're making the right knife within the right category, the right way, with the right materials and finishes and all that stuff, and making the right decisions based on all of the knowledge and not just one part of it. So something to think about moving into your knife making, or even if you've made knives for a while, just thinking about those things so that you can actually make better decisions within ergonomics, finishes, metal choices, all that stuff. So the other part of this is, if you're going to make a knife and you're going to categorize it within that certain thing, you need to make sure you're thinking about the whole knife and not just the blade. The downside to a lot of knife making is we focus so much on the blade, the steel choice, the heat treat. That's where all the focus is. And almost none of the focus is on ergonomics or handle choices and handle material choices and why you pick certain things and why you shape certain things for certain reasons. You know, a lot of people don't wrap their head around that because they're so focused on the edge retention part of it, because they think that that's what is a knife, is a thing that can hold an edge for a long time. If someone just was worried about that, they would just buy disposable razor blades. You know, if they're just focused on the blade and that's it, and can it cut, they'd buy disposable razor blades and they'd never buy anything that had a handle on it. So you need to make sure that you're focusing on both parts. So for something like a camp knife, things that I had to think through with this particular knife was not just, did I pick the right choice in steel? Did I put the right heat treat on it? Do I have the right bevels? Do I have the right corrosion resistance finish? But also, do I have the right handle ergonomics? Am I going to pick the right handle material? Because whenever it comes to the handle material, it needs to be able to withstand what you're going to be doing with that knife. If you're going to be using it as a camp knife, it needs to be a handle material that can get wet, that can withstand really hot temperatures, really cold temperatures, you know, all those different fluctuations within the elements. You need to be able to do that and think about that. If you're just making an EDC that's going to be used in a office building, you don't need to worry about that as much. But if you're going to use something like this at a campsite where it can be extreme elements, you need to think about that. A lot of people will do the whole entire blade, get everything perfect, and then go, oh, I'm going to pick that handle material because it looks badass. I'm going to pick that one because I like it. And that's the extent of their choice process, is those two things, and not, again, I'm going to slap some zebra wood on the side of this, not realizing that that wood's not stabilized. And what happens to non-stabilized wood whenever it gets wet? It expands, it swells up. And then when it dries, it shrinks. If you do that a couple of times, you get gaps between your tang and your scales, between your pins and your scales, and now that handle is uncomfortable and people will not use it. You want everything to work. If you have the best edge retention and the most uncomfortable handle in the world, they're not going to use your knife. Okay? Just because this is the part that they feel. You really need to focus on this part. So if it's going to be wet, it needs to be something that can resist being wet and still work how it needs to work. So thinking through those processes, not just this part, but the whole knife as a whole. Just like you're not just going to focus on how people make the knives, but also how people use the knives. Not just how the blades work, but also how the handles work, picking the right ergonomics and picking the right materials. Whenever I was thinking through this particular knife, and this goes into the knife making part of this episode, when I was thinking through this particular knife, I was thinking, okay, what materials do I have that I can utilize that will be able to withstand those elements? So out of all of my materials, I picked between some black G10, which would look really sleek on this particular knife. I picked maybe some stabilized maple burl, because this is awesome. It's stabilized with the resin and it's going to last a long time. I could have went with that. Nice contrast. Looked pretty cool. And then I also picked this material right here, which a lot of people have no clue what this is. This is just some really awesome. You will wait for it. Wait for it. Yeah. Wheelbarrow handle. So I've used this particular material on a lot of different camp knives and EDC knives, and this is what I decided to go with. I'm going to go with this particular material. It's awesome. It's my favorite material to work with on an outdoor style knife because that handle was literally meant to be outside its entire life. So it has amazing weather resistance and it is the best smelling wood ever. This stuff smells like pepper. So whenever you're working with it, it just smells like you're cooking, which is just absolutely awesome. But I'm going to utilize this wood right here because it contrasts amazing with that particular finish. We're going to use some black micarta pins, which is going to contrast real well with this particular wood. It's going to have amazing resistance, and I think this is going to work. The whole point behind this whole intro, though, hopefully your takeaways were, if I'm going to make a knife, I need to focus on how those knives are made and how they're utilized. If I'm going to make a knife, I need to focus on how the blade's going to be and how the handle's going to be, because both of those make a knife, not just the blade. Think about the whole entire thing, what it's going to be used for. Wrap your head fully around it and make a good quality knife. Guys, let's go ahead. Let's get these things, put on this, shape them, and get this thing knocked out. So now that we have them nice and flat, we can actually see how much of a taper we have going on here. See, the gap is pretty different right there. What we need to do before we go through and drill any holes is we need to take some material off of the front here so that it will actually line up and be square. So if we were just to take these and space them out, you see how big that gap is. That would be 90 degrees with the pin going through right there. But as soon as you pinch this together, it's no longer 90 degrees going through there. So if we want everything to be square, we need to take off the material that you see to even that out. I'm going to go ahead and do that with them in this form right here. I know that I need to take about a 1/16 of an inch off of both of these right off the bat, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then we'll match them up to this, and we're just going to keep taking material off until it's the same thickness from here and here. So that's what we're looking for. We're just trying to match up the thickness to make it easier for us so the pins line up better. Let's go ahead. Let's get to tapering. So now that we have everything tapered, the scales, go through, check it with the calipers, and we are even all the way down. So now we can go ahead and lay this flat, drill through one side, and then basically that side's done. We'll flip it over, drill through the other side, and then everything should line up nice and even. So now what I did was I went ahead and put the knife on the outside here, just lined it up with the pins, and I marked all the way around the tang onto the scales, and I did that on both sides, so this side and this side. Now what I need to go ahead and do is cut them out and get them put together, and then I'll go ahead and start focusing on the area where it's going to meet the ricasso and all that stuff. But for right now, I just need to get them cut out and then kind of figure out how I'm going to adjust them a little bit. You know, I want to be able to remove this section right here because I'm going to have this hole exposed. So we've got a couple of things that we need to do. We're going to go ahead and do that and then move on from there. So I went ahead and picked an angle that I want the area that's going to meet the ricasso, and I dropped down this top edge right here. So right now, this right here is the exact size of the tang. I went ahead and sanded it down just a little bit to make sure that it was exactly even with the tang. So we're going to drop it down right here. So where this is the tang, that's where we're going to end up. So you'll see exposed area of the blade itself back up over here. And then that is where we're going to cut around that lanyard hole right there. We're going to go ahead and cut this off on here, and then we'll finish both of these off on the 2x72 and the spindle sander, because once this stuff is actually attached to the tang itself, I won't really be able to sand that area or this area without hurting the finish on the blade. So go ahead and cut it off now. Okay, now that we got our two-part epoxy, which is just JB Weld epoxy mixed up, we're going to go ahead and coat everything with it. All right. So now what we want to go ahead and do is clean up all the excess epoxy on areas where, we had some squeeze out, but that we need to basically make sure there's not any epoxy there because we can't fix it after it dries. We're just going to use acetone to clean these areas up. Now it's time to go ahead and trim down the pins. The nice thing about my micarta pins is I can just trim them down on here. They don't get real hot whenever you actually grind into them. But we're going to grind those down, get everything nice and flat on both sides, and then we'll just start contouring. We're not going to do anything crazy on the contouring. I am going to go ahead and contour a little bit here where your pinky goes, but really it's going to be a nice simple handle profile. Nothing too crazy. It's not a super wide handle, so there's not a whole bunch that needs to really go on in this particular profile. We're going to keep it nice and sleek, nice and simple, and make it look awesome. So we're going to go ahead and dip it in the boiled linseed oil. Now I am going to end up setting it in there for about 12 hours and let it soak in and everything. But we'll get a little sneak peek real quick. There we go. Let me give you a better close-up in the outro though. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap this Shop Talk Tuesday up here with a little bit of this. So, what do y'all think about the contrast between the handle, the pins, the blade? How the handle dips down to where you can see the texture above it a little bit right there with the ricasso area. Exposed lanyard hole. The tapered Tang plus the tapered scales. I love the way that looks. Now let me know. I'm really interested to hear, the feedback on, the handle choice here. Is it the direction you would go? What would you do? And did the intro of this video make sense to you? I know it was a long intro, but hopefully y'all got some good takeaways from that. Because that's info that, again, I wish people would have told me whenever I first started. It makes it a lot easier so that whenever you do make a knife, it's super comfortable. Little things like this little pinky area right here, doing the tapering across here so that the hand just fits in there and hooks into place is one of the things that, I've learned as I've done this. And not every knife needs a finger choil. Not every knife needs like a crazy Coke bottle profile or anything like that. You take some of the hints from the Coke bottle and do that tapering through here, up to the front through here. But even this area is still flat. So you get a good comfortable grip. There's lots of things that go into it. So again, just watching people make them, watching people use them yourself, and you really will be able to make a good quality knife. But guys, that is the end of this one. If y'all would, give the video a thumbs up, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.